There are a lot of tape measure tips and trick videos out there, and most of them are really helpful. But I wanted to make a quick, comprehensive video that covers all of the tape measure basics. Everything from how to read them, to how to handle them, even tips on how to look and sound like a pro when you're using them. Everything in one go. So that's what I'm talking about today on the Honest Carpenter Show. I'll start by saying that I really do prefer the Stanley Powerlock 25. It's quality, it's affordable, it's used by many pros in the field. The Mylar coating is quite durable, and the 1-inch wide blade has a rigid projection of about 8 feet before it snaps, which is helpful. And I use the Stanley with imperial measurements on both sides. That's inches and feet. They make a model with imperial and metric on opposing sides, but I like pure imperial because you'll have to read from either side frequently. Also, the tab at the end is supposed to wiggle. This is because the tab itself has a thickness, and it slides to add or subtract that thickness itself. We call this the travel. So if you butt against something to measure, it adds a 1/16. If you hook and pull, it subtracts a 1/16. This makes your measurements accurate no matter what. And the 3 rivets keep the tab from shifting over time, even with some rough handling. Okay, first I'm going to talk about understanding the tape. If you're already familiar with tape reading, then maybe skip ahead to the handling section. I'll mark it down in the timeline. But for total newcomers, here it goes. The tape is divided into feet, inches, and inch fractions, and it's designed to help you identify these things quickly. For instance, foot marks are in large black arrows, most noticeable. Inches are in full lines that reach all the way across the tape width. Half inches are the next longest, followed by quarter inches, eighths, and all the tiniest marks are 1/16. Now, here's the first big tip. When you're pulling a tape to get a measurement, you can basically ignore the foot marks. Instead, just call out the inches. For instance, on this measurement, I won't say 5 feet, 3 inches, and 7/16. Instead, I'll read the lower line, which is the total inches pulled, and say 63 inches and 7/16. That's how we do it in construction, and it lets us measure and cut faster. And yes, of course, metric users have an obvious advantage that everything is already in full numbers, not subdivided feet. Plus, their fractions are in increments of 10, which is, logically superior. But I grew up in a place that uses imperial or SAE, so that's what I'm talking about today. That said, where most Americans get nervous is with all the tiny little marks, the fractions. It's a little daunting because it looks like a mess. But here's the trick. If you want to get faster at reading the tape, you're best off thinking of the little marks just in terms of eighths. It's the easiest way to orient yourself. Here's how it works. When I pull my measurement and it's a fraction, I immediately look for the last 1/8 inch mark. So the front numbers are 1/8, 2/8, or 3/8. The middle point is 4/8. And the back numbers are 5, 6, and 7/8. So if a measurement falls right on a 16th, just look at the last eighth, double it, and add 1. So if I'm here, 5/8 becomes 10/16 plus 1, 11/16. That's really it. The hardest thing you're doing is doubling your eighth and adding 1. Eventually you get so you recognize the relative position really quickly and do that little calculation in a blink. Now, that's the easiest way for beginners to learn these fractions. But if you want to sound like a pro, do this. Avoid saying even increments. On a job site, we would never say 4/8. We would just say a half. And we would never say 6/8. We would just say 3/4. Every even number falls under a larger fraction, so say it as the larger fraction. 5/8 and 7/8 are fine to say because they're in between larger fractions. They're odd. 3/16 and 7/16, they're odd too, also fine to say. But 2/16 should be an eighth, 2/8 should be a quarter. It's a little annoying at first, but if you just focus on the size of the line, you'll quickly be able to orient yourself on the tape. All right, let's get into the more interesting stuff. Handling the tape. This may seem elementary, but it's really easy for pros to spot a newcomer because they're really clumsy with the tape. These things are more awkward than they seem, and rookies fall victim to simple mistakes. So here are the best ways to use the tape, manipulate it, and read it like a pro. First off, keep it handy. Tape measures are your eyes on the job site. Always keep them close at hand. Always. If you don't have a tool belt, keep the clip on it so you can hook it to your belt or pocket. If you do have a tool belt, maybe take the clip off so it fits your tape pouch more easily. And keep the tape measure on the side of your dominant hand. You can draw it faster that way and be ready to measure. To use it, practice the one-finger draw. When I lift my tape, my pointer finger instantly gets behind the tab and pushes it out a bit. This way, I can hook it straight onto something and pull, or easily draw the tab with my left and butt up. This is something I do reflexively. Likewise, get good at crimping the blade with your finger. I don't use the locking button much unless I'm leaving the tape extended and walking away or maybe doing interval marks. But it's usually too slow to set. So get good at locking the blade with your finger. When you draw the tape, use your pointer finger to pull up on the underside of the blade, trapping it in place. The fat of your finger will secure it here with friction and pressure. Nearly all good tape handling revolves around this technique. Draw and crimp. And when you're reading the tape, you always want to sight directly down on the blade. This gives you the best view of your actual measurement. Looking from an angle can skew your reading. So whenever possible, get your eye at a 90-degree angle to your pulled mark. You may have to climb on something, kneel down, or crane your neck, but it's worth it for accuracy. Also, rolling the blade can help. The blade is curved to make it more rigid. This means the end of your blade will float off your surface, and this makes it harder to read your mark lines. To get your best reading, roll the blade sideways a bit. This will bring the edge down into contact with your surface, which makes the actual correct mark much more obvious. It also makes it easier to put your pencil mark in just the right place. Also, swing the tape a little, especially if you're reading an edge. Swinging the tape back and forth a bit makes the actual measurement more obvious because it produces contrast. It accentuates and confirms the mark that you're reading. Okay, let's get into more complex stuff. Sometimes you need to pull a lot of tape at once, like for a vertical measurement. To do this without looking silly, use the draw and fold method. Pull the tab with your offhand and draw the tape about 3 feet and crimp. Now fold the tab end down so it almost meets the case. With your offhand finger still holding the tab, pinch the edge of the tape at the base, pull another 3 feet, and crimp again. Now release the tab and let it fall through the hole between your thumb and forefinger. If you need to, you can repeat the process again by drawing out and dropping in the same way. The goal is to get enough blade exposed that you can put the tab on the floor, prop the tape up straight, and push the bend higher with this feeding motion. If you're reading a point on the wall, like a door casing, push the blade bend up a few inches past your read point. This way you can make the read on a flat segment of tape and it won't be skewed or bent. If you're drawing a lot of tape down low, use the floor to your advantage. Shoot the tape with your free hand, crimp it, and shoot it again. Let the tab rest on the floor. Now shoot again until the blade breaks under pressure. You can feed the tape across the floor like this towards a butt point somewhere at the far end. Just remember that the tape steers like a shopping cart. If you push right, it'll steer left. If you push left, it'll steer right. So try to direct pressure mostly forward. The opposite of this is the hook and draw. If you're not butting to something, but hooking on instead, you can shoot the tape several feet and suspend it in open air. Now you can hook the tab onto your pull point, crimp the blade really firmly, and draw slowly while crimping. This technique of hooking and drawing is ubiquitous in the trades, and it absolutely works best if you learn how to crimp the tape well. On short draws, you may not need to crimp the tape at all, but the farther you draw, the more you have to crimp because you need that pressure. Why is that? Because you don't want to let your tape sag. Say you have to pull a measurement across an open span with the tape suspended in air. Gravity will want to draw the blade down, but if your blade sags too much, it'll corrupt your measurement by lengthening it. So you really want to use your free hand to prop the center of the blade a bit. And you may even want to pinch and pull with your free hand so you keep a lot of pressure on your pull. This way the tab won't fall to the floor and your tape hand is free to make the rest of the measurement. Suspended measuring is hard though, so as often as possible, you want to use the floor to your advantage. It just fixes the gravity problem. And that said, if you have a situation where it's going to be hard to pull a really long distance, consider splitting the measurement instead. To do this, butt or pull from one direction and make a small tick at an easily calculated measurement, like 50 inches. Then pull from the other side to this measurement. Add the new number to your first number, and you have your total pull. This is how you measure things longer than your total tape, and it also just makes some long measurements much easier. But when you need short, accurate measurements, there's another method. We call it burn an inch. Sometimes you may feel like you can't trust your tab for some reason. Or you might be pulling from a marked point that has nothing to hook onto or butt into. In this case, you can draw the blade and put the 1 inch line exactly at that mark point. Then make the measurement as usual and just subtract the 1 inch afterwards. Sometimes I'll even do this with a 10 inch mark because your hand can get in the way when you hold near the 1. The point is, it doesn't matter where you start the measurement from as long as you understand what number to subtract afterwards. This does produce a really accurate measurement though. Now, let's talk about a difficult concept, measuring into a corner. This can be weird because it often requires bending your tape and reading into the bend. And it's subjective because some tapes are flimsier than others and they don't all have the same bend radius. It takes a little experience, but here are some tips for learning it. It can often help to pin the tape before you push the bend in. In other words, you can pull most of the distance, then use your hand or foot to trap the blade down on a surface. Now it stays put while you finger crimp the blade at the base and push the tape firmly into the corner, causing it to bend in tight for the reading. This way, pressure from your tape hand won't cause the tape to slide. You've got it pinned down. As for reading the corner, try to imagine how the rounded tape would lie flat. Envision it unfolding into the corner. Here's a really easy way to practice. Find an area with both an inside corner and an outside edge. Push the tape into the corner and read the distance to the edge. Now pull the tape from the edge, bend into the corner, and read the bend. Since you know what the actual measurement is, you can see where it falls on the bend and get used to reading at that point. But whenever possible, pulling measurements to the edge just tends to be more accurate, so do that if you can. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about marking. Remember that the tape has prominent measurements marked for fast layout. So it's very easy to make continuous 1-foot marks by pulling the tape and just ticking at every full line. And 16 inches is a very popular measurement in construction because we tend to frame things 16 inches on center. On a tape, it's often a red mark. You can quickly see it and make a tick at every 16. There's also a black diamond for every 19.2 inches, which is common spacing for engineered joists. But the point is, all of these intervals end up breaking neatly on the 8-foot mark, which is the common width of sheet goods and a lot of lumber. So it's good to just think in terms of a total 8 feet for a lot of quick layouts. Now, in construction, for some fast layout, we may speed things up by tab scratching. This is where we pull the tape, put the desired measurement at our starting point, and use the tab itself to make the mark. You can just put a little pressure on it to scratch the surface. This isn't terribly accurate, and we really just do it for speed. But it is a really convenient way to make a lot of fast, rough marks, especially when you just hop from mark to mark. Another version of this is the hold and scribe. Here you want to leave a long score line. So you pinch your tape at your cut width, butt your finger to an edge, then press the tab in the field and draw a long mark. Or you can even pin your pencil point to the end of the tab and make a long pencil line. This is very effective quick marking. And of course, the trick that everybody loves, you can even draw circles with a tape measure. The tab has a little slot in it. This is for hooking onto nail heads and pulling. So if you know the half diameter of your desired circle, you can brace your pencil point here, swing your tape in an arc, and scribe a circle. It's accurate to about 1/4 inch, and it's a great way to produce arcs and semicircles quickly. And finally, if your tape gets rusty or frail, throw it away and get a new one. These things are way too important to mess around with. All accuracy starts here. Anyways, those are my tape measure basics. What did you think of the video? Got anything to add? Let me hear about it down in the comments. Also, I'll link some various tape measures down below, as well as some marking tools, so feel free to check those links out if you're interested. As always, thanks for watching. Be sure to check back soon for more videos coming up, and please consider subscribing and hitting that bell button to turn on notifications. That way you'll know the moment we post something. I'm Ethan James with the Honest Carpenter. I'll see you next time.